How we doing, everybody? It's Wardy here, and as you guys can see, we're back at it, breaking down all the latest in Mets land in our Big Mets Update segment, that being February 12th, 2026, at the time of this video dropping. And oh, baby, is there a lot to get into. I'm really excited about it. Why, you might ask? Because a lot of good is happening so far this spring training, separate from the Francisco Lindor injury news that we're going to first touch on to begin the show, as well as what the Mets may do to replace him in this infield should he miss any playing time to begin the regular season. We're going to talk on the newcomers and Freddy Peralta, Bichette, Jorge Polanco, Luis Robert. What do all these players have in common? They're now officially New York Mets. They're already starting to make their impacts to varying degrees this spring training. And we're going to get into Peralta. How is he getting acclimated as the newly acquired ace in this rotation? And there's a lot of great things to say about him. Bichette, how is he adjusting to handle third base? Jorge Polanco, how is he looking? They're getting first base reps that we actually have some film to show you, along with much more as to what's going on with Carson Benge, Ronny Mauricio, the youngsters in this mix we're going to break down, as well as a plethora of other topics in this one. So sit back, relax, and get yourself ready for the ride, everybody. And all I ask is that you hit that like and subscribe button on your way in, as it's a great way to support the platform. Help us get to 38,000 subscribers, because once we get to that milestone, we'll be giving away a brand new Bichette or Freddy Peralta jersey to one lucky subscriber, all just as a thank you for supporting here on the platform. And shout out to our amazing sponsors, as always, that being at SeatGeek, that has you covered for all of your ticketing needs, everybody. Check out our great friends at SeatGeek, because they have over 70,000 active events to choose from, making them the #1 rated ticketing app in the game today for a reason. And as you guys can see beside me, it's so easy to navigate in their app, and what I love most is their grading scale system. It's 1 to 10, red to green. So if you purchase a ticket more in the red range, 1 through 5, it's not a good bang for your buck, and you should probably get a different ticket elsewhere there in the SeatGeek app. If you land one more in the 7 through 10 range and in the green, it's a great bang for your buck, so you know you're getting the best deal possible. They're fair, they're honest, and they're straightforward. I've been using SeatGeek well before they've been a sponsor on the platform, and I will continue to do exactly that. Use our promo code WARDY10 for whatever you need in the ticketing space. Again, that is promo code WARDY10 for 10% off your next ticket purchase. SeatGeek, link down below, and thank you guys kindly again for checking them out. Now, let's hop right into this, everybody, and let's begin our discussion, because like I said, we have a bunch of topics to break down in this one. And let's begin here with what you guys and gals can see is the following, and this is going to be an awesome conversation here with Freddy Peralta. I want to give a shout out to Simone, Eli, or Ellie, one of the two. I apologize if I'm butchering one of them for her last name. They're doing a very good job covering the Mets and sports as a whole for Pix 11. She had an awesome interview the past 24 hours with Freddy Peralta that I'd love to share with you guys. So please listen up, and then we'll go from there.
Just reporting and being out here in Port St. Lucie.
It's been great so far. A lot of new people for me, but it's been awesome.
Yeah, just the entire transition, the experience so far. I'm sure everyone's very welcoming. But what has the reception been like since you've been here in New York?
I don't know. I think in general it's been great so far. Everything in general, like people here, they've been showing a lot of love to me.
Sure.
And players that I had a long time to not see that I saw again. And it's been great. I can't wait. I'm very excited to see what's coming for us, and I'm here to help.
What type of mindset do you take into spring? Obviously, you've done this a time or two, but just kind of getting established and being here with the Mets now. What's your main focus of where you want to maybe improve or make an impact?
I think there's a lot of things, a lot of little things. But for me, I think one of the best things that I always say at this time in the spring is staying healthy is the #1 thing for me. Help the other guys, especially the young guys, to have a better routine if they need it. I'm always available for help anybody. I also too learn from the other guys, new cultures and all that, new teams, new teammates, and like I said, I'm very excited.
What are you thinking about the new look you have now?
I look great. I think that's it. I'm gonna say myself. I like the colors and the orange and blue. You can tell.
And the haircut too.
New look.
Yeah. Look, huh? New beginnings.
Some people say that I look way younger. What do you think?
You look young. You look good.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's what I want. That's what I need.
Awesome. Have a good time today. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
All right.
So you can just tell how charismatic and how happy of a personality you're getting in Freddy Peralta right away. I love to see that. Great job by both Simone as well as Nelson Figueroa. Continues to do a great job. Former Met turnout analyst there that you see for Pix 11, among many other things. And my initial takeaway, not only from that interview, but just from everything I've seen so far from Freddy Peralta this spring, is that Mets slam dunk landing their guy, because like what has been the case with many other players that they've acquired this offseason, it's not just the talent that they're bringing to help on the field, it's the personality that's really going to help bode well off the field, in the clubhouse, in family settings, at dinners, at hangouts, among many other things. I mean, there's a reason why Tobias Myers, who was the other piece of the puzzle in the massive trade with the Brewers not long ago for the Mets, spoke glowingly of Peralta and said how very much he is a team leader and how he essentially took him under his wing a bit in Milwaukee in subtle ways, both on and off the field. And that's going to bode so well not only for guys continued like Myers, but for everyone else in this pitching staff, and honestly, just as a collective group. Again, just because you are, say, a certain position doesn't mean that you can't have a lot of value and a leader in the clubhouse. There's been fluctuation that people have talked about over the years as to the type of impact and role starters specifically have in a clubhouse and in a locker room, because they're not necessarily out there every single day the way that a position player would be. But from everything that's been explained from Peralta's point of view, as well as former and active teammates, the common consensus is that not only is Peralta a team leader, but he's a guy that really loves to be loose, be fun, and prides himself on, again, staying healthy. Peralta is just one of a handful of starters that's been able to give you basically 30 starts each of the past 3 seasons. Very impressive thing to do in today's game. There's no denying that whatsoever. So very, very excited to see more of Freddy this spring. And as soon as he starts toeing the rubber for those games that we'll be covering on the platform, regardless as to what the results are going to be, it's going to be awesome. And we are definitely talking about not only Freddy here, but we're also going to talk about some guys that maybe had a little bit of an upper hand against Freddy at pitchers and catchers as of today that we're going to get into here in a second, everybody. But let me know your continued thoughts about Freddy Peralta and the immediate impact he's providing for the Mets, both on and off the field. Because on the field, well, you know what we're getting. We're getting an ace caliber starter that'll hopefully be here beyond the 2026 season. It appears abundantly clear he wants to be here. David Stearns knows him on the back of his hand as a 17-year-old prospect he traded for literally a decade ago. So to see his development and see him now come full circle back with Stearns, I have a feeling that as long as Peralta can stay healthy and pitch very similar to as he has done in the past for the Brewers, I don't see how this man will not be here for a fairly extended period of time. I think that's going to be ultimately a great thing for this rotation and for the Mets' success on the pitching end moving forward. Now, before we get on to other topics, I did want to give a quick shout out to 2 individuals here, not that they asked for it or anything, but it's relevant, especially in the baseball coverage space. And I would first like to give a very quick shout out to a good friend of mine and Danny Wexelman. Many of you guys know Danny on the great coverage that she has done, especially as the analyst, a reoccurring analyst that you have seen maybe on Baseball Night in New York with Sal Licata, another good friend of mine, with Will Salmon and all of them. Danny has done a tremendous job with her baseball coverage. I'm very happy for her because she's going home. I didn't know this prior, but I'm assuming that she's a St. Louis native because she just put out on X earlier today that she's going home, that she's officially being hired by the St. Louis Cardinals as their TV host and reporter. So a massive congratulations to Danny. I'm wishing her all the best there that you're going to see in St. Louis. I'd imagine that she's probably not going to be doing much coverage for Mets and Yankees ball for SNY anymore. We'll see if that changes or not, but wishing her the absolute best now with her future endeavors. Now that's going to be there in St. Louis covering the Cardinals. And we also have more news for SNY separately, everybody. They have brought in Chelsea, let me make sure I have the name right. Chelsea Janes here, who's going to come in as their new Andy Martino, essentially, because Andy was SNY's MLB reporter that we knew, that was their insider, essentially. And now that Martino is essentially the talking head for the official Mets YouTube channel and their socials now, as basically just giving you quick breakdowns on players and giving you inside looks and perspectives on things. Now that Andy has left SNY, that role is now being filled in by Chelsea, who's previously working for MLB-wide coverage for the Washington Post. So awesome to see Chelsea get right back on her feet after everything that's transpired, unfortunately, with the posts that we have seen over the past month. Very, very unfortunate. So many good people I know, unfortunately, are without a job right now. I understand that, but I'm really happy to see Chelsea get this opportunity, and hopefully she thrives with it, which I'm sure she inevitably will there for SNY. But now to get off that tangent, everybody, let's go on and get into these other key topics, including the following. I just want to mention this briefly. We saw yesterday, the Phillies announced that Nick Castellanos is not attending spring training. They're going to either trade or release him. Well, folks, Nicky C is no longer a Philadelphia Philly. He's officially been released by the Phillies, and as you see from Todd Zolecki, reported ahead of the John Heyman post here, it states that Nick Castellanos acknowledges on Instagram that one of the reasons why Rob Thompson benched him in Miami in June is that he brought a beer into the dugout after being pulled from the game for defensive purposes. Now, I guess I understand, and it's very different because I'm not an active or former player, so what I say means literally nothing in comparison to like how, maybe a teammate or other players feel. I feel like that is an overly uncommon thing to do, but obviously ruffle feathers in the case of Rob, where he wasn't happy about that, and probably wasn't happy with Castellanos' performance either, which went in hand as to why he was pulled from the game. And I'd imagine that may have went in hand with the level of frustration as to like, Nick, you're not even playing well right now, and now I see you just sipping on like a Coors Light or something in the corner right after I pull you from the game. Like, that is not the type of player that I need right now from you. So if that is the case at all, I understand the criticism, and one way or another, Nick Castellanos' time with the Philadelphia Phillies is coming to an end. No one saw this coming. Cue the sarcasm. I think you're only someone who's not paying attention, who genuinely thought that Castellanos, Harper, Schwarber, and everyone else involved with so many very boomer bust bats and very little defensive upside was going to bode well and be something that gave you longevity as the Philadelphia Philly group. It's not true. Castellanos just finished the season 17 home runs, right around a 700 OPS. Really has not put up great numbers with the exception of one season he's had in Philadelphia with 29 home runs and over 100 RBIs. And even then, that he's pretty much a standalone DH. Castellanos is not a guy you want in the outfield, okay? So to any Mets fan that wants Nicky C, listen, I like Nick Castellanos and his personality a lot. I really do. I like how straightforward he is. I like how blunt he is. And I like those kind of characters that aren't afraid to really show the fan exactly how they feel. Having said that, there really is no logical fit for Nick Castellanos on this team whatsoever. The Mets already have a player profile like that, and Mark Vientos as is, and given the fact that Vientos is still on this roster, which I'm surprised by a little bit at this point, just because I really thought that one of Vientos, Baty, or Mauricio would be dealt before opening day. Not to say that still can't happen, but obviously to be determined on that front right now. The Mets aren't just going to trade these guys for the sake of trading them, but Castellanos is someone who, again, not going to bring much value for you at first base, not going to bring you much of any value in right field, pretty much a standalone DH, and while I wouldn't hate him for the vibes, I just don't see how he makes logical sense from a defensive configuration standpoint for what the Mets have already built and what David Stearns has been very adamant about building so far this offseason. So when I see the list currently of the Padres, the Blue Jays, the A's, the Rangers, the Reds, right away I say to myself, if the Reds have the appetite, that would make a lot of sense. Here's the thing, though. They just brought in Eugenio Suarez, and Suarez and Castellanos, former teammates there in Cincy. These are two guys that are not known for their defensive value, and they both profile best at DH. So I think that might make things a bit too redundant for Cincy. We'll see. I think it would make a lot of sense for Castellanos if he went to the Reds, if they have interest, just because he's going to a bandbox for half the season. Literally outside of Coors, Cincy is the easiest park to hit in baseball statistically for the most part. So it would make a lot of sense if he went there to juice his numbers and then maybe gets traded at the deadline, or helps kind of have this run it back vibe going with the Reds offensively with some of their youngsters, with Ellie De La Cruz among others, and try to go for a playoff push there with Tito at manager in ways that, you can kind of rejuvenize your career a little bit. Now that you're not the guy, you're just one of many pieces of that puzzle there for the Reds. Because if he doesn't go to Cincy, I think the Padres would make a lot of sense from a standpoint of Padres buying low for a guy that's going to bring them some upside offensively in a deeper lineup. You think the Texas Rangers, the ball can certainly fly there. That's more of a bandbox along with Brandon Nimmo and others. Blue Jays, the same applies. But, I know the Blue Jays just lost Anthony Santander for the next 5 to 6 months. Such a terrible contract since he signed it. My God. Aged like milk. Having said that, though, I don't know how much of a fit Castellanos is for Toronto right now. And the A's would be fun, but how much does he have an appetite for something like that? I'm not entirely sure. So you guys let me know your thoughts about Mr. Nick Castellanos officially being released by the Philadelphia Phillies. Because as we move on here in our discussion, everybody, let's go on and talk about Bo Bichette here a little bit, everybody, as Bo spoke to the media earlier today. And there's a couple things I wanted to mention regarding Bo, but this is certainly one of them.
Obviously, first and foremost, as someone who's spent your entire career with another organization, just what are the initial, days like of trying to get your bearings and get acclimated to a new situation?
Meeting a lot of new people, trying to figure out a new routine, but it's honestly really exciting. It almost feels like my first season again.
Obviously, first and foremost, as
I like that Bo emphasized, it almost feels like my first season again. Because think about it. Bichette is entering his age 28 season. He's only been on the Toronto Blue Jays his entire career. So this is a major adjustment for him, where everything's learning new on the fly. And all I can say is I can't wait for when Marcus Semien is officially there at Port St. Lucie, because I know the man that's going to benefit from Marcus more than anyone else, probably, at least in adjusting to the Mets now, is going to be Bo Bichette. Bo had a tremendous relationship in his one-and-done season with Semien in 2021 before Semien then hit 40 home runs, got a massive bag, 7+ years, like 170 or so with the Rangers, had become their captain. Then he won a World Series with them a couple years later in 2023. Bo has heavily credited Marcus Semien for helping him really understand the game at the major league level and be a true mentor for him. So I'm really, really intrigued to see how that relationship is going to be once they rekindle with one another. But I definitely would love to know your thoughts about Bo Bichette, everybody, because when talking about adjusting to third base, Bo did state today that the main thing is really just timing for him, and also knowing that as a shortstop, you have far less time in the infield to kind of, process and do everything you're going to do, whereas third base, you do have a bit more time. So it's really just coming down to timing for him and his practice and everything that he's getting his ducks in a row of with handling third base. And when we talk about Francisco Lindor, this is a perfect segue into that now. As we know, Lindor is officially having had surgery. I think he had it today, if I'm not mistaken. This is why I told you guys 2 days ago in our video when we first found out the Lindor news, my title was Lindor needs surgery, because that's a certainty, and that's just the unfortunate reality. Trust me when I say I wish that it was not as clear-cut as that, but it is that. 9 times out of 10, when you have a GM or a president of baseball operations going out of their way to say ahead of time before a procedure happens that, yeah, surgery's on the table, that is preparing you for the inevitable as a fan base and as media, among other things. So to see Lindor get that surgery is not surprising. He, Corbin Carroll, and Jackson Holliday, all players that we've seen go down with that hamate bone surgery over the past 24 hours or so, wishing them all the best and all speedy recovery. They all should be ready for opening day, but the concept of the Mets shifting Bo Bichette off of third base to go back to his natural position of short, should Lindor miss any playing time to begin the regular season, is not something that's actively on the table for the Mets, as they've reiterated. They're going to let Bo continue to smoothly transition to third base. They don't want to really do anything to harm that, and to their point, I 100% am with them on that. If Lindor doesn't miss, say, more than a couple games, maybe, I think as of now, Lindor is just going to miss the first series or so of the season, should he miss, because think about it. The time frame when Francisco Alvarez went down with his injury with the hamate bone, the same exact thing a year ago, was right around 43 days, okay? And he had that surgery on March 11th or so, and he returned around April 24th, if I'm not mistaken. So for Lindor to essentially get surgery a month sooner puts him in much greater traction direction to be with the Mets right as opening day begins there towards the end of March. So that is why I'm not overly concerned when it comes to what are the Mets' options should Lindor not be ready. But it's good to know at least that the Mets are not deviating away from their season-long plan with Bichette just for an early season hiccup. You shouldn't do that. It's only going to make things potentially worse and figuring out his defensive development at third base. You don't want to throw off that rhythm there, if that makes sense. And as you guys can see beside me, we have some awesome clips from Bo Bichette so far from pitchers and catchers reporting. Thanks to Max Goodman, who's doing a fantastic job on the beat for the New York Mets. So you'll see among many other people on the beat this spring, but he's certainly sticking out like a sore thumb right now just because he's really gotten a lot of great clips so far while in attendance at Clover Park there, including the following that you see beside me, and Bo Bichette going deep oppo off of Freddy Peralta. Listen in, everybody. Listen to the crack of the bat here. As you guys can also see here, too, this is Bo Bichette getting more work at third base, which is awesome. Both Carlos Mendoza and new bench coach Kai Correa have been giving him a bunch of feedback, according to Max Goodman. Correa even stopped the drill at one point earlier to jog over and talk something through with Bichette for the moment. And as we mentioned again, Bichette, the main thing that he's just trying to get most acclimated with getting more of these third base reps is really just how he handles the timing of everything, knowing that you still need to obviously be high tempo and have fast pace, but isn't to the same degree as to when he would be playing shortstop the past number of years for the Toronto Blue Jays. So let me know your continued thoughts about Bo Bichette down below, everybody. Your thoughts on him. Expect to be batting third in this lineup with Lindor and Soto just ahead of him there. He's going to drive in so many runs, especially with Soto ahead of him. It's really not even funny how good of an offensive year Bichette's going to have as long as he can stay healthy. This man is a weapon. He is a hitting savant. He is tremendous with runners in scoring position. He has a 44% above league average statistic per Fangraphs' weighted runs created plus, WRC plus for short, with runners on base. This is a very valuable bat in the prime of his career, who's coming off of what was just short of a World Series championship run with the Toronto Blue Jays. Unfinished business, and hopefully he can reach his goal in year one with the New York Mets. We'll just have to wait and see. But who will fit those shoes? Who will fill those shoes at shortstop? Well, as we have broken down, including my segment I did with Brandon London in the New York Post yesterday, you have the infielders of fringe MLB players and Vidal Brujan, who the Mets acquired this offseason, Christian Arroyo. Guys are pretty much not going to get looks at the major league level unless the Mets really need it, like a Greg Kessinger or, a Michael Clough. Those kind of guys come to mind. But for the most part, Ronny Mauricio, someone that may get some looks there. But if there is a, God forbid, scenario where the Mets clearly are going to need a couple weeks worth of playing time at short, because maybe, God forbid, just things aren't going right with Lindor, and he will not be ready until, let's say, 2 weeks into the regular season. Let's just say that's the worst scenario right now. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying, what if? If that were to happen, I would argue, be very adamant in arguing, that there's no better player to put in a position that he's not comfortable with, who should be able to provide still a plus bat for you and not be a massive liability defensively. Listen, why not give Brett Baty the opportunity, right? If you're not going to trade Baty right now, even though I would like you to trade Baty, I understand if you're not, and I say I would like them to trade Baty in the sense of doing a need for need, win for win trade, not for the sake of doing something where you're just trading for the sake of trading, because I like Brett a lot. I know he has value on this team. The defensive versatility is through the roof, whether it's third, second, left field. But I'm like, okay, I understand shortstop is the most demanding position of that entire group. But having said that, knowing that, I will be the first to say that, okay, shortstop, is that something that he could handle in a smaller sample size, maybe at least for half a game or so, and then you bring in someone more defensively sound? You could go ahead and go down that route, most certainly. But I don't know for certain if the Mets are going to. I'm just saying that I think that out of the current options that they have, now that Luis Angel Acuna has been traded, and now also that separate from Acuna, you no longer have Jet Williams in the wings as someone that you can actually go ahead and use as your backup shortstop. So bearing that in mind, while the Mets don't have those options anymore, Baty, I think, brings more to the table right now. So I definitely want to hear from you guys in the comments down below if you're for or against Brett Baty potentially getting reps at shortstop if the Mets really have to go down that route for, say, at most a week or two. Hopefully they don't have to use anyone and Lindor will be ready. But speaking on the topic of Lindor being ready, we do have some more pieces that we're going to get into here in just a second, having to do with what doctors have stated as to what the status is and the recovery time regarding Lindor here in a second. But before we go ahead and talk more about Lindor, I do want to show you guys some more clips here. That is Mr. Jorge Polanco. Here's Jorge Polanco, everybody. As you guys can see right here, had himself a line drive against Freddy Peralta, which is nice. We also have some more clips regarding Polanco that I'm going to show you guys here in just a second, and including the following. And here is also, there's Ronny Mauricio, but I want to go back to Polanco. This is the clip I want to show you guys from Max Goodman, again, on X. This is Jorge getting his first base rep. So there is our first true look of Polanco at the Mets facilities, getting first base reps. How does he handle, obviously, those plays? And naturally, what's going to be interesting to see, because Polanco has been, from what's been reported throughout the offseason, learning first base in a very, versatile way, because he's such a versatile player and is known for playing all aspects around the diamond. He's not going to be playing at all traditional for first base. So when you see Polanco kind of maybe look a little awkward or have his footwork be different than the traditional norm, this all goes in direct hand as to why. Because for Polanco, this is very much more so on the front of him getting comfortable the way that he knows how to get comfortable and how the Mets are comfortable with him getting adjusted at first base. I specifically remember some of the videos of his training work throughout the course of the offseason and the way that they are approaching first base, a way for him to have quicker ability both on and off the bag. That way he's not as stationary, and maybe ways that we've seen a guy like Alonso at times, unfortunately, be a sitting duck, and then bam, it's a double down the first baseline that Pete just didn't stand a chance on. Not that Pete hasn't dived out and made some really, really great plays with scoops, because we know he has most certainly done that. I'm not trying to take that away from him. I'm just saying expect a completely different dynamic and dimension there at first base. And what I'm so excited about with Jorge Polanco is not just the vibes. The Mets are bringing another Dominican player that's going to resonate well with Soto and many of the others. Not just the fact that his father lives in New York, so there's a lot of New York connection here for Polanco, which is how the Mets were able to swoop him up on a bit of an overpay on 2 years, $40 million total or so. It's the fact that Polanco, like Bichette, is a clutch king, okay? This is a guy who not only batted 800 plus on the OPS from both sides, left and right side of the plate this past season, but he's also a guy that was unbelievably clutch with runners in scoring position all year long for a Seattle Mariners club that's not known for their offense, especially in Seattle half the season, with the exception of Cal Riley and Julio doing a tremendous job there in the outfield. Polanco is the reason why the Mariners made their playoffs with his walk-off heroics and then hit multiple home runs against Tarek Skubal in playoffs. Really clutch in high leverage situations, runner in scoring position situations, runner on base situations in general. Polanco's going to bring veteran leadership and more of a balance now at first base DH, where I think between Polanco and whoever else the Mets may play at DH, we're going to finally start to have a bit more consistency there than what we have had in recent years. It'll be interesting to see how many reps a guy like Baty gets at DH, a guy like Vientos, a guy like Mauricio. Again, Vientos makes a lot of sense to get a good amount of healthy reps at DH for the times that Polanco's at first. But having said that, I still feel that the Mets are inevitably going to land a defensively minded first baseman, even if we get into the early goings of spring training. That's why Ty France, who the Mets have been in the market of, would not shock me if they land in the end. And then that could fluctuate again, the playing time of first base to DH to platoon, who gets more reps where. Polanco, I'd imagine, is going to get more reps at first base and not, barring changes, because this is how the lineup's looking, even though, again, I have my reservations with that. I really think Polanco would be best at DH, but we'll see if David Stearns can outsmart me the way that he has outsmarted others in the past, right? I'm just a fan at the end of the day. His guy getting paid the big bucks to make the big decisions. So, having said that with Jorge Polanco, I would definitely love to know not only your thoughts, but your expectation for Jorge for the 2026 season, rather. Let me know in the comments down below. Give me your early predictions. How many home runs and RBIs do you think Polanco is going to get in this Mets live this year? Getting a 26 home runs, 78 RBIs this past season, and 32% above league average as a batter. Very impressive veteran season there, and his final year there for the Mariners. And yes, he's a switch hitter, so ignore my graphic as I see I have right-handed for his where he bats from what side. That was early on my end when I made the graphic. It was before I double-checked, which I usually do, and he's a switch hitter. So that was on me completely. But let me know your thoughts about Jorge Polanco, everybody. I really appreciate that. Is now going on from talking about Jorge, there was another thing that I did want to touch with you guys on regarding Francisco Lindor and the status that now he has with his injury, basically what it means. And we saw some good pieces that came out that you guys can see right here from Max Goodman, for one, as he spoke to Dr. Jacques, and I'm going to butcher the last name, talking about basically the hand surgery and the recovery timeline, as well as there's another very good piece that came out from Denny Abriano for SNY. Also, my guy, Brandon London, had a doctor on yesterday on the New York Post Sports YouTube channel breaking down this injury. So there's many ways that you can consume information to find out what is a doctor's point of view now from the Lindor surgery. And the common consensus is that he's going to be okay. He's likely going to be lacking power to start. Unfortunately, with these kind of injuries, there is potential that a guy like Lindor may lack power for as north of the first 2 months of the season. So it's not overly shocking, and it honestly wouldn't be far off from what we're used to with Lindor, which is a guy that doesn't really do a whole lot for you to begin the year offensively. He's very Jekyll and Hyde with it. He'll have some seasons where he's guns a-blazing, and then other years where he's non-existent until you literally get to mid-May, like what we saw in the 2024 season, for example. As soon as Lindor got put in the leadoff spot in mid to late May, everything changed for him and the Mets lineup in 2024 and their NLCS run of a year. But Lindor now, what we know is that the power is probably going to lack because he's going to need to build that up again from the hand injury naturally. So expect the power to hopefully tap more back in by, again, towards the end of May, beginning of June. God willing, he will still have power prior, but this is just to kind of set the expectation for you guys that there is a reality that, unfortunately, Lindor may not have his most powerful swing when he first gets back going in direct hand because of this injury. And it shouldn't be overly shocking when you hear this, just because, again, the same thing happened with Francisco Alvarez, and it has been the case with other players who have sustained this injury over the years as well. But the interesting note in this specific article here from Danny that I implore you guys to check out whenever you get a chance is that, knowing that he is a switch hitter in Lindor, that actually benefits him in his recovery because, especially as a left-handed hitter, which he's going to be more often than not, his injured hand is going to be on the top of his hand. So there's going to be less to worry about for him and his approach at the plate with how he grips the bat, especially because he's not going to have his injured hand be the more dominant hand more often than not when he takes at bats. And that also could mean something where it maybe Lindor's really, like, let's say hypothetically Lindor's really struggling to begin the season when he gets back from injury, batting from the right side of the plate because it's just way too uncomfortable for him. In that scenario, you could still play him majority of the time, especially against right-handed pitching, and then maybe have a replacement later on in the ball game if you think that Lindor is not going to bring you much more value. Again, his defensive value alone is why you should really never take Lindor out of the game. But if he becomes such a massive offensive liability where you can't even bat him from the right side because maybe he's just really that uncomfortable, then okay, you figure out something with your other options that you have in your infield. All I know, though, is that thankfully, God willing, the timing of this could not have been much better for a guy who didn't have this injury really spark up until he started to ramp up at pitchers and catchers. It sucks, obviously, seeing this happen now versus earlier in the offseason, or maybe at some time last year when the Mets, in theory, really didn't need Lindor because it's not like that they were going anywhere for a guy who's dealt with ailment a couple of years now with this hamate bone. But it's now gotten so pronounced and so uncomfortable that this is what warranted the surgery. The same thing with Corbin Carroll, who was already out training and working on multiple different training regimens for the Diamondbacks literally right after he had his surgery. I saw videos of him earlier today. Very impressive. Jackson Holiday for the Orioles, another guy. Speaking of the O's, they signed former New York Met Chris Bassett. So Pete Alonso gets Seabass back with him as a teammate. Happy to see Bassett not going to a contender in the National League. I'm also very happy that Bassett's going to an O's team that I am going to be rooting for this year. I got no qualms with the Baltimore Orioles, and I'm going to be rooting for Pete naturally. It's really hard not to, right? So that's all I have to really say about that, though, regarding Lindor and all those things, everybody. I did want to touch on this briefly, and then we're going to talk a bit on Carson Benge, Ronny Mauricio, as well as Kodai Senga to wrap up the show. But this was really, really hilarious, guys. So there's been this clip that's went around for the past, oh my God, like at least 24 to 48 hours now. And it's Chris Getz of the Chicago White Sox speaking glowingly of Luis Angel Acuna as a shortstop. Pardon me, not a shortstop, a switch-hitting shortstop. And reminder, he's not a switch hitter. Ronny Mauricio is, but even though Ronny should just be batting from the left side, but that's a discussion for another day. Just listen into this clip, and then I'm going to give you more of a follow-up with it. It's pretty funny.
He's got a lot of potential. He can play all over the diamond. He's a strong defender, base runner, switch hitter. He can do a lot of different things to help you win.
I want to bring someone in that you're excited about, right? And our evaluations on Acuna are very strong. For the reasons you stated, very strong defensively, switch hitter, he can run, he's got great instincts.
To bring in a player that is young, who's got pedigree, he's got bloodlines with his brother, can play all over the field. He's a switch hitter.
So Getz, after doing this media tour with everybody talking about how great of an acquisition Luis Angel Acuna was, their new prize switch hitter, he followed up with this today, as you guys can see. And I quote, "So I probably have been getting carried away describing his versatility," he joked. "He can play every position on the field. Why does it have to stop there? I called Luis Angel and told him that even though he's just right-handed, we still love him." So actually hilarious. Again, did Chris Getz think all along that he traded for Ronny Mauricio, or did he get things confused? Like, it's one thing to slip up in one interview. It's another that when he went on like north of 5 interviews talking about Acuna as a switch hitter, I'm genuinely wondering, did the White Sox make that move thinking he was a switch hitter? Like, genuinely? Like, how? I don't know. But White Sox seem to have things in order as they typically do. Cue the sarcasm, okay? So, beyond that, we also have the following, everybody, that I want to show with each and every one of you. Let me go ahead and pull this up for a second, and that is in relation to Carson Benge. Carson Benge, Mets top outfield prospect, spoke to Steve Gelbs earlier today. I want you guys to hear Benge's remarks as to potentially making this opening day roster and what it would mean and everything else in between.
Carson, David Stearns has been very open with us since the beginning of the offseason that they want to give you an opportunity to compete for a spot in the major leagues right off the bat. When you hear that, though, what does that do in any way to alter your mindset heading into camp?
I mean, it's pretty surreal, like getting a chance at possibly playing for the New York Mets. being one of my dreams, always playing Major League Baseball growing up as a kid. But I feel like as long as I stay true to who I am, not try and do too much, I feel like things will go good.
You know, Carson, David Stearns has been very open with.
One thing that I noticed right away with Benge taking his hacks today that we saw at, pitchers and catchers is, has a little bit of not a loopy swing, but a little bit of a lawn swing. And naturally, a lot of fans were like, oh my God, I don't like the look of that swing. I'm like, guys, please, you're the same fans that didn't watch literally a single game of Carson Benge last year. I did. I am actually grateful to say that last season was my first year, even though I've been covering the Mets. I'm entering my 6th season now. I was doing this full time on YouTube and for many other platforms that you guys will see more announcements of as we get closer to the season, thankfully. Separate from that, this past year in 2025 was the first year that I covered prospects pretty much daily, if not at worst weekly on the platform. And keeping tabs with Carson Benge all the way from A-ball to get all the way to AAA this past season was nothing short of a treat and a pleasure. He was tremendous every step of the way, and I even saw him in person for Syracuse before his season wrapped up last year, and he looked awesome too. So Benge has all the makeup, all the potential, and for the analysts on X that think that they know exactly how to read a player, all I'm telling you is there is a massive reason as to why the New York Mets in particular are going out of their way to give Benge every opportunity imaginable to basically be our starting corner outfielder. Carson Benge is without a doubt the most polished outfield option the Mets have internally that they're hoping to blossom since Brandon Nimmo and Michael Conforto. And the expectation is that Benge should be a more polished talent than Conforto when looking at both his hit tools and his defensive makeup. Michael wasn't a massive defensive liability, but Benge is expected to have more defensive range than Conforto and how he's panned out so far in his career. Benge is also someone that should be able to hit very well against both right-handed and left-handed pitching. Naturally, he's going to have an adjustment period like anyone else, but listen, everything is right in front for Carson Benge to take this role and run with it as the Mets' everyday right fielder. And if he doesn't, they have MJ Melendez, who they just signed, who has an absolute cannon, hits baseballs very, very hard, big power upside, but also the floor is a guy that isn't really even a major league caliber player consistently. When you think of Brett Baty, he could get reps in right field, but he hasn't really done that much in his career. So again, the Mets are really positioning themselves to give Benge as much runway as possible and as much feel as possible to handle right field with ease and be their guy. So all I'm saying is don't be surprised, but rather be ready when you see Carson Benge hopefully get a healthy amount of reps at the major league level for the Mets this season. As someone who boasted about him all year long last year, I simply cannot wait. Now, to go on from Benge, everybody, like I said, we just have a couple other topics I'd like to share with each and every one of you. That's all Mets related here. And it also does include the following. And Ronny Mauricio, here's Ronny, as you guys can see. Fun little note regarding Ronny Mauricio, everybody. I don't know if you guys know the news. Ronny Mauricio is no longer repping his previous number. Now that Ronny has given up his number, he is going to be rocking 0. Yes, you heard that correctly. Ronny Mauricio is going to be rocking 0. He couldn't find any real number that stood out to him that he thought was notable, so Ronny Mauricio will be number 0 for the Mets this year for when he gets infield work as well as when he is just getting his at-bats in general. So I have no clue what the future holds for Ronny. I'm fully anticipating this to be another spring training where he just tears the absolute hell out of baseballs, tanks galore. You're saying to yourself, Ronny needs to be on this team. He's going to tear it up in AAA right away, and then we're going to be in a very similar predicament to last year where he's playing so good you've got to call him up. But then when you do call him up, he has such limited value on the club because of how limited playing time you give him that for that reason alone, I really don't know, again, what to expect. Ronny is someone I could definitely see traded this year. He's someone that I could see really blossoming into a greater role if he thrives with his opportunity. And he's someone that needs to bat mainly from the left side. I cannot emphasize that enough. Unless Ronny's hit tools have magically changed for the better this past offseason with his offseason work, he's not someone that I do think is going to be able to thrive at the major league level as a switch hitter. And I'm going to be very firm in saying that because every single step of the way that we've seen with his development thus far has told us that as good and as talented as Ronny Mauricio is, he looks so much more comfortable and polished from the left side of the plate. From the right side, there's a lack of power. From the left side, everything looks consistent. And it's not that he can't have success batting from the right side. We have seen him do it in very, very slivers of sample sizes. But batting from the left side is where I think it's going to reign supreme for Mauricio to have the most success for him in his career. We'll see if he continues to make that adjustment in ways that, a Cedric Mullins did when he broke out in 2021 or so for the Orioles, and that's when he officially stopped being a switch hitter and went to batting solely from the left side. Obviously, we don't want Mauricio to blossom to whatever Cedric Mullins was down the stretch for the Mets in 2025 because he was atrocious, but that goes without saying. Final remarks that I want to share with you guys are as follows. We see here former Mets pitching coach Jeremy Hefner referred to the New York Mets as that other team up north in reference to his former employer. He didn't say anything malicious. As I was listening to Hef, he was giving very, stereotypical answers for his excitement to be with the Atlanta Braves and to be working with their pitching staff. But I'm clinging on to literally anything of a remark that could come off as the slightest bit of a slight to build this rivalry up as it was in 2022 again, okay? I want the Mets and Braves rivalry to be right in the thick of it as it was in 2022. Hopefully a better end result for the Mets than what we saw that you're losing the division in a terrible fashion at Atlanta. But I love the rivalry. And Braves fans that follow me, because I have a lot of Braves fans followers, know how much I love to hate. And that's why I love sport. One of my favorite things about sports is the fact that you can build these rivalries and give you so much added incentive to want to lock in these games, talk smack, and have fun more than anything. Like, that's why I love the Mets-Phillies rivalry as a Pennsylvania resident actively, originally from New York, but I've lived in PA. I'm not too far from Philly, so I love that kind of dynamic. It's a lot of fun. I love to hate. I really do. And when you don't have rivalries, I think it takes away a beautiful aspect of not just baseball, but sports as a whole. So, listen, I know this is not much of a slight, but I'm taking that for what it is. Bring it on, Hef. Bring it on, Antoine. Bring it on. Let's have ourselves a locked and loaded and heated matchup between the Mets and the Braves this year in 2026. Let me know if you guys are for or against that. Final thing here is Kodai Senga, everybody, speaking to the media over the past day. Senga is someone who's looking to not only get off to the right start with the Mets this time around, but a healthy start with the Mets. And this is what he had to say to the media. Listen up, everybody.
2年間、なかなかずっと投げてきて2年間ダメだってことがないのですごいメンタル的に難しかったですし、そういう自信も失いかけたことももちろんありますけど、でもやらなきゃ終わる世界なので、すごいはっきりしている分、思いっきりやろうかなっていう気持ちで今こっちに来てます。
These past 2 years have been frustrating and tough mentally, really, and at some points maybe I started to lose confidence, but in this world, it's either you do it or you don't, and I'm here to do it, and that's all there is.
2年間、なかなか何かありますか？
今シーズン目的なんかありますか？
まずはもうノームはインジェリー
To not get injured.
Yeah, Kodai was asked straight up if he has any goals this upcoming spring, and he made it clear cut, don't get injured. See how he's not even joking? You can tell that the confidence has wavered from his previous remarks as well. And this is what's so tricky about Senga, because I think I'm just one of many Mets fans that would commonly agree we don't have an ill will with Kodai Senga. We love the guy. We love the personality. There's nothing inherently wrong with him. He's a team player through and through, and he just wants to win. The problem with Kodai Senga, however, is that he's so meticulous as a pitcher that these inconsistencies, thanks to the injuries the past 2 seasons, have completely derailed what his initial perception was in this organization, which was an ace caliber pitcher. I think Senga still has that upside, but there were massive red flags that we saw last year in hand with the injury. And the main thing that we saw, especially after he went down with his injury and became a shell of a pitcher, and it's crazy, he only had a 3 ERA last year, but he wasn't even a major league caliber pitcher the last couple months of the season. He was just dreadful. But what's true about Senga is, especially when he returned from injury after he first went down in June, he wasn't the same in large part because his ghost fork was non-existent, was not at all getting the whiffs as it previously was not that put-out pitch that is what gave him the great success that he had in the 2023 season, where he got Rookie of the Year and Cy Young votes in his first year at the big league level. That was night and day in a bad way. So Senga needs to fine-tune that arsenal, get that ghost fork working right, and getting the swing and miss back to what was effective for him. And if that is not going to work, then he needs to work on the fly with adjusting his arsenal with Justin Willard, newly appointed Mets pitching coach. That's what you have to do if you're Senga here, because when you look at the depth of this rotation, there's an easy role where Kodai Senga could be out of the rotation within the first month of the year if he does not perform, because the Mets do have an abundance of starters to choose from right now. And while maybe not all of them have the ceiling that a Kodai Senga has, most certainly all of them have the floor, which is a AAA pitcher. I mean, the bar is that low with Senga from what we've seen. So it's all up to Kodai. Can he be a guy that goes back to what we saw more in the first half of 2025, looking like more the ace caliber pitcher that the Mets needed? Didn't look amazing every time, but really was steady for a while. It was barely giving up runs the first month and a half. He was very effective even while walking guys the way that he was. And as Carlos Mendoza noted over this past day, Senga looked very good, and he's encouraged by his bullpen session he had. He's already touching 92 plus on the gun, which is very crucial at this point in the year. It's only February 12th, and Senga's already touching 92 plus. So knowing that that's his starting point should mean that he should be able to build up and get that velocity up to, again, hopefully, God willing, anywhere from the 95 to tops 97 range. Now, Senga's velocity is another thing that has also drastically changed over the past couple years due to these injuries. I don't think it has nearly as much to do with age for him as I think it has so much more to do about how he's handled his body, the lack of confidence, and the lack of, efficiency when he's pitching. And not having that confidence level is most certainly going to go in hand with how the ball comes out of his hand, ultimately his release point, and just everything that he does as a pitcher. You can tell that he has not had the moxie, the confidence, or, not that he hasn't had the drive, but he's second-guessed himself. Am I second-guessing himself? This is what's led to the lack of success we saw post-injury in the second half of the 2025 season. So definitely let me know all your thoughts there regarding Kodai Senga. What is your expectation for him this season, Mets fans? Do you think he can really blossom to be, part of a three-headed monster with McLean and Peralta the way that we hope? Or do you think that the reality for Senga will either be A, being traded at some point this year to potentially upgrade the rotation or a need-for-need deal, or B, he's just someone that misses out and is boxed out of the rotation because he cannot perform to the same caliber as other starters can on a more consistent basis? Whatever your thoughts are, please let me know them all in the comments down below. Thank you again all so much for watching. I greatly appreciate it. This was a long one, but we had a lot of breakdown in Mets land this time. So smash those buttons on your way out. Thank you again. And as always, no matter what, let's go Mets.